What is going on, all of you supersonic hedgehogs and friends out there in the world? I am MegaAmpster. Thank you for checking out this video. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Returning viewers, always great to see you here. Thank you for all the support. We gotta talk about, because I still haven't talked about it yet, because I literally just finished this as of a couple days ago as of this recording, the Sonic Frontiers Final Horizon DLC being the third and final free update for this game, and as far as we know, the end of the content for this game. So, just to preface a little bit, going into this, I wasn't like super over the moon hyped. I was curious to see what they were going to do. The main thing I was really excited about was the introduction of playable Tails, Amy, and Knuckles in a 3D Sonic game for the first time since, I mean, sure, you could count some of like the spin-offs, you could count Black Knight for Knuckles and like stuff like that, but like the first time they've been playable in this format has literally been since Sonic 06, which is kind of a bad place to leave off, right, with having those characters playable. But after that, just SEGA was so scared of introducing these characters. So the fact that we have these three here, the core squad, in 3D like this is awesome, So that's the main thing I was hyped for. Just to give my overall thoughts before we get into it, in case anybody doesn't want to watch the full analysis, I imagine this is going to be fairly long, at least 20 minutes probably, if I had to guess for myself. You guys know me, big Sonic fan here. I have a lot to say too about this, but I was mostly positive up until a certain point, and that point also kind of ruined the ending for me and made it a lot less enjoyable for me personally. But up to that certain point, which I'll get into later, I was actually more positive on this DLC than most people, it seemed. I love the core gameplay loop of Sonic Frontiers, and that is here in full force. I guess first of all, let's just get into it with my quick thoughts out of the way. Overall, still positive on it, but the ending just left a terrible taste, horrible. Like, I was at the point where I was just finishing it just to finish it, But anyways, let's get into it. The main thing here are the three new playable characters, right? Being Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. And I have seen a lot of critiques about how they play, and I do agree in a lot of the cases. I think Knuckles, for me, is inferior to how he plays in the Sonic Adventure games. It boggles my mind, because, like, obviously the Kishimoto and the team are huge adventure fans. The main thing with Knuckles that I really don't like, he's kind of fun. He is the most combat-focused out of the three, kind of, because he has, like, the 1-2-3 punch, but even then it's kind of limited. Knuckles can only climb specified walls. So, like, in the base game, you have the green walls Sonic can run up and climb. For Knuckles, it's red walls. So, I don't even get why they bothered at that, because, like, in the adventure games, of course, Knuckles could climb so many different kinds of walls, and they would block you based on how high you go if you weren't able to climb something. Here, it's only those red walls, so I don't understand that. What makes it unique from Sonic, you know what I mean? It's literally just Sonic's climb with a Knuckles animation instead. And to that point, it's also the climbing's very glitchy. Just trying to jump off a wall, it immediately sends you in a 180, so like, I find myself trying to reposition a lot of the time, because like, we'll climb all the way up a little red panel and accidentally reach the top. And once you reach the top and you do not position yourself correctly, you are sinking like a rock. So like, it made some really, made for some really tricky vertical exploration sections with Knuckles that I really was not a huge fan of. His gliding is interesting. It's not terrible, especially because you can unlock an infinite glide. I should preface this again. I should have done this earlier. This will be a full out spoilers for the story, everything. I just want to talk about it. So you have been warned. I'll probably save like the ending for the end of this video, so in case you want to tune out before then. Just like Knuckles glide is okay. He has this weird charge up animation where he jumps in the air, and then it's essentially, it's like Sonic's drop dash. It's the triple jump move. All the characters have that here, where they do the double jump, and then I'm not a fan of the double jump, as those of you who are previously seen some of my stuff on this channel know. But it has this weird like 1 or 2 second charge up animation, whereas in the adventure games the glide was instantaneous. I don't really know why they did that either. It feels kind of weird. So there's that. And yeah, I mean, Knuckles is my least favorite of the three, I think. His drill boost, it might be my favorite boost. Well, no, it's a lie. It's really good. His drill boost is immediate, but the glide's not for some reason. I don't know, but it's fun to glide around as Knuckles. Amy is probably my second favorite, because in terms of platforming, I think she's actually the best of the three. I will say I wish she used her hammer more she really only uses her, you can see like she's got the floating jump with the tarot cards, which is honestly really nice. I do like that floating jump, kind of like the asteroid wisp in Sonic Lost World, for those of you who remember that. But her hammer's only used for her parry. It's literally not used for anything else. So I feel like that might have been a missed opportunity. They even have a random line of dialogue mentioning it in the game. So I'm like, are they just self-aware? Like, what's going on here? So I don't know. That was okay. Let me actually switch over to Knuckles here if I can find it. This is a previous live stream I did going through and trying out all the characters here. But yeah, like Amy, I do like her platforming. I think that was fun. I really wish she had more of the hammer in her moveset. I do think she is a lot better here than Sonic Adventure. Like, I will say, in Sonic Adventure, her levels were like a slower version of Sonic's, and she had the hammer flip and like the hammer spin, which I wish were here. I think that would have been awesome. But like, in terms of how she plays, it's so much better than Sonic Adventure. Personally, that's how I feel. And Adventure 2 in the multiplayer, if you want to count that. But let's talk about Tails, because Tails is definitely my favorite character to play as. A lot of which, to be fair, is in part due to the Adventure 2 mech. I do love that Adventure 2 mech boost that you can unlock for him when you're at full rings. I think that's great. He also like throws infinite wrenches, which is interesting. You know, that he decided to do like the ring excuse me, the ring bombs from Sonic 06, and no tailspin from like Sonic Adventure, which was a little interesting. But like, I love that you could do so much with the mech. You can unlock the laser for it. It's so cool. I love Tails' boost there, and his flying's pretty good. He also has a charge up animation like Knuckles with the glide, but he uses it for his flying, which, I mean, you can fly with Tails for so long in this game. So I actually really like Tails. I really do like playing as him there. I think he's my favorite of the three, but they each kind of have their own issues. I still think Sonic Adventure Tails is probably better than this. I like this Tails more than Adventure 2, but what I love about this Tails is that it kind of combines Adventure 1 and Adventure 2, where, you know, you can free roam with him in the open world. I just think he controls a little better in Sonic Adventure, but I have the same issue with Sonic. You know, Sonic controls better in Adventure than this game to me. But like, you also can get in the mech like at free will. I think that's such a cool idea, and they're never going to do Adventure 3, but if they did, I think that's a perfect way to kind of combine the two. So I think in that regard, they did a great job with Tails there. He's really fun, and platforming with him can be pretty fun. Interestingly, and I mentioned this during my little reaction to the final trailer I had, Amy makes sense, but Knuckles has the homing attack, which, like, sure, like, maybe, I know, I forget who it was, someone mentioned, like, oh, maybe he trained with Sonic at one point. Like, sure, it's just as a longtime fan who's used to Knuckles not having the homing attack, like, certain characters having it feels weird. Tails does not, though, which I like. Tails does not have the homing attack. He just throws wrenches at the targets that he's locked onto. Amy has it. It feels more natural for her, but Knuckles, it's a little weird. I wish they gave him... Honestly, like, they could have done the dig, like the drill claw from Adventure 2 instead. But I don't know. Either way, it's there. That's kind of a minor nitpick, but overall, I mean, I enjoyed playing these different characters. Like I said, I like the core gameplay loop of Frontiers probably more than most people. It is kind of mindless sometimes. Like, you see those little skill Coco that you can go to and get like skill points, and they all have their own skill trees. I like the fact that they had their own skill trees. I was expecting like one shared one for all three. I don't know how that would have worked, but the fact that they all have this many moves is really cool to see. And it's just great to have them here. Like, sure, they could have been implemented better. I think all three of them kind of have some like glitchy stuff about them. Knuckles, I think, is the worst of the three, unfortunately, because he's one of the fan favorites, right? But they kind of did him dirty in terms of his gameplay style. I don't think it's horrible. I don't know what I was doing there with Tails, but like, it's definitely not as good as it could have been with Adventure and Adventure 2 coming out, what, over 2 decades prior to this game. So hopefully they have some time to refine if they do appear in the next 3D Sonic game, which I hope they do. Hopefully they will have some time to improve that. In terms of like the different cutscenes they have in the game, they do have some cutscenes and dialogue. You can meet up with all the different characters, including Sonic and Eggman and Sage, and talk with them a bit. The performances overall, I think, are actually really good, especially Amy. I was shocked. Amy has some really emotional moments in this DLC. Like, I was kind of shocked. The only issue, though, and it's not with the performances, I think the voice actors did a great job with those. My issue is with, I'm trying to see if I can find one quickly. My issue is with there's like the lack of animations. You know, it's kind of, it's very noticeable. This one's with Eggman, where like a lot of the times their mouths don't even move. Like they're just not animated during these dialogue sequences. So it's kind of weird. I feel like with someone like Sage, it's less noticeable, but like even Eggman just sitting there, or like Sonic and friends, kind of, you can see them, but their mouths literally don't move. So it feels a little slapped together in that regard, but just a little thing there. All right, you're listening to it now. We got to talk about the music. Music's great all around the board. I actually, including this one, not all of them, but a lot of the cyberspace remixes I like more than the original versions. Probably most of them, honestly, than the original ones in the game, because there's what, 9 cyberspace levels actually. I believe they're brand new, and they have remixed versions of other tracks kind of handpicked from the base game, which is really cool, including the older Ornos Island. So a lot of them are really good. I love the Kellen Quinn rendition of I'm Here, as well as the orchestral arrangement. The characters now each have their own movement, I guess is what they call the open zone exploration songs. For the most part, I really like them. I like Sonic's is good. Knuckles is my favorite. Blood Flow, I love that. I hope it comes up some point in this video. I love that one. Tails is really good as well. Amy's probably my least favorite. There it is. I called it. I love this one. This one's so catchy with that freaking bass that comes in. It absolutely slaps. Amy's is probably my least favorite. It's good. It's a pretty song. It's just not my kind of go-to. I like the more in-your-face, funky, kind of songs. And Tails is a little more low-key, but it's really good as well. It's catchy. I like the catchier ones, whereas Amy's I wouldn't say as much, but it's still really good. The music all across the board is really good here, I think. Of course, it's a Sonic game, it's bound to happen. And the base Sonic Frontiers had really good music, and this just adds to that, right? And it's available on streaming now if you're curious to listen to it. But of course, that was going to be a pro. All right, let's talk about the cyberspace levels. So the thing with this DLC is you get to play as 3 side characters. I will say one thing to mention before we move on to cyberspace levels. I'm not a fan of how you get to unlock these characters, because I was really hoping, at least at some point, and I don't think I did unless I missed something, there's no way, well actually there is at the very end, you get to play as Amy, Tails and Knuckles, and even Sonic, which we'll get to in a bit, at very scripted moments during the story, which I'm not a huge fan of. What it meant I had to do was that once I was like, okay, like this is the last, like I can kind of tell him like this is the last time I'm gonna play as Amy, this is the last time I'm gonna play as Knuckles, because I'm a crazy person. I went around and collected all the scale cocoa and did all the challenges with each character specific one, and I had to go around the entire Ornos map with each one and do that. And at that moment, this was kind of on me. I hadn't unlocked fast travel. I forgot that, beating all the cyberspace levels, I don't know if you need all the S ranks for them. I think you just have to beat them all. Then you unlock fast travel, which I had not done at that point, so that was kind of on me a little bit. But I'm just not a fan of how they handled that. I feel like, at least at some point, maybe at the very beginning, you have little segmented moments to get used to each character. Be like, okay, let's play as Amy for a few minutes, then we'll switch to Knuckles and then Tails, and then you can switch between any of them, But there was no option. It was very scripted. So not a huge fan of how that was structured. But anyways, moving on to the cyberspace levels, because like I said earlier, there were 9 brand new ones, which was honestly pretty interesting. I wasn't expecting brand new cyberspace levels, but they are here. And honestly, for the most part, I know I've seen a lot of people say, oh man, this level design is horrible. It's like ridiculously, it's like a Kaizo Sonic game, which, yes, it is tough. Right there, you can see evidence right there. But for the most part, and maybe this is going to be a hot take, I think these were some of the most fun I had with cyberspace levels in the entire game. Each one had its own unique gimmick. The one here was that you had this bomb on top of you and you pretty much had a minute to beat the level. That one was okay. I wasn't a huge fan of that. But there was some where you race against like a Cyber Tails. I thought that was really cool as someone who was a fan of the races against Sonic and the Sonic Adventure games. When you played as Tails, it was kind of a similar idea. So that was actually really cool to see. I did like that one. I'm trying to see if I have any of the other gimmicks here. Oh, there was one specifically. Well, there's a couple more. There was the one with the boost packs, those green little canisters you could run into, and it would give you like a powered up boost that could actually, break through enemies, which was really great. And they did some crazy stuff in the air with that, which was really cool. You can gain some incredible distance with that. The one I really liked was, it might have only been one level, It was one. I think it took place in one of the city escape, not actually city, the city environments. The theming there, where it was like an accelerometer, and you couldn't go like if you went too fast, and like kept your momentum going for too long, it would actually like stop you in your tracks, and I think you would lose some rings. You wouldn't die immediately, but you would lose rings. I thought that was actually a really cool gimmick. It kind of made me manage my boost gauge a little more, but that was kind of cool. And like spin dashing, because I had the spin dash unlocked from Wave 2 when I beat all those challenges. And like if you spin dash, it immediately boosts to the peak, and you have like 2 seconds until you blow up. So you really couldn't completely cheese the level, which I liked. And like some of the level design was honestly awesome. You know, this level was a good one. There was another one. It wasn't this. There was another one. This kind of has a lot of the Chemical Plant Act 2 vibes from Generations, right? There was another one in the Chemical Plant theme that was really cool, I thought. I forget which one it was. I wish I remembered. I did not play it in the stream. It was later. And it was so fun. Like, I was spin dashing all over the place. There were platforms. There were so many different paths. Like, they all kind of lead to the same, like, place, like, in terms of the end goal. But, like, they were really, like, there was a lot of branching level design there. And I thought that was honestly really cool. The one cyberspace stage I did not like, and it also had the gimmick I really did not like, which was the mines. There were a couple levels with invisible mines, and one of the challenges to unlock what they're called the Lookout Cocoa, they're the replacement for the vault keys in the base game. One of the challenges was like, don't hit any mines, and like, kind of like if any of you remember that side quest in Sonic Generations, where you have to use Knuckles to like, you're in Sky Sanctuary in 3D, and you're trying to find places to dig gold coins or something, if I remember correctly. It's kind of a similar idea where there's like a little radar, almost like also like the Emerald radar in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 when you're doing the treasure hunting levels, where it'll start beeping faster and faster, and it'll turn red once you're right near a mine, but they're invisible, so you don't know where they are. That was annoying. I did not like that gimmick. I liked this bomb one slightly more, but not by much. But the mine one was just annoying. But in terms of there was one cyberspace level in particular, 4H, I believe it was. I wrote it down specifically here. So much of it made the side objectives in those levels impossible. So much of it was just floating crates. Like, just not even like platforms, just small crates. Like some of the ones you saw at the background at the very beginning of the stage here. And like, because the platforming is so janky with this game, like the physics were completely clashing with the level design here. For example, complete opposite of the other chemical plant-based level I was talking about before, where I was spin dashing everywhere and there were multiple paths. You can go crazy high. There were a lot of like ramps you could use to gain crazy height. This was the exact opposite for me in terms of like terrible level design. Like just tiny boxes you had to platform across with a bottomless pit beneath you in like 3 different areas. It was honestly absurd. That I think was just terrible level design. So unfortunately, the quality of the design was inconsistent. That one especially really clashed with just the physics of the game. You all know I don't like the physics of Sonic mainly in this game. I hate the double jump. Turning around midair is almost impossible. It takes forever. And especially when you have tiny box platforms like I just mentioned with that at the level, excuse me, it was just absurd. So that was not good. But then when you have slightly more open areas, like this one here wasn't bad. You know, this was honestly kind of fun. But as you could see here, I was going after all the objectives. So to kind of talk about some of those, for whatever reason, they brought back the numbered rings that you have to hit in order from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the silver moon medals, which are on a timer. Once you collect the first one, you have to collect all 5 within a given time. Those were originally in forces, so that was interesting to see. I don't think they were bad, honestly. They were interesting. I think I like the numbered rings slightly more than the silver moon medals. The moon medals can be really tricky. But, I mean, it was interesting to see. You know, not like anything mind-blowing, but it's interesting they brought that back. Like I mentioned, there were ones where you have to race tails. There was, I guess it's the only cyberspace stage I did, huh? Yeah. This stream ended up being longer. I didn't want to go on longer, but there was some where you race the shadow tails. That was fun. Some of them were actually really cool. Like on that level I mentioned earlier that I really liked, where you have to find a hidden goal. So instead of the usual goal, there's a separate like blue portal that usually requires some tricky maneuvering and platforming to get to, or just some exploration in general, which honestly, that might have been one of my favorite objectives to do because it allowed you to explore some of these levels more. I don't think the Crate one had that objective, which was good. That would have sucked, but still not great level design there. Another interesting one was, and most of the cyberspace levels had this, where you had to collect a certain amount of the animals, like the flickies, the penguins, the walruses, I forget their names, but I only know the name of the flicky. That one, it was an interesting idea, but like you really had to search for them. I ended up doing all of them. I'm pretty much 100% of this DLC. I ended up doing all of them. That one was, I don't know, it really slowed the pace down a bit, even more so than like the Silver Moon medals, because at least with those you could like do some crazy platforming and eventually like see how fast you could collect them while trying to beat the timer. They don't tell you how long the timer is, so you're gonna have to just go as fast as you can. So that keeps the momentum going. But the one with the animals, I had to actively like search around. Some of them were in weird places. Honestly, I had to backtrack almost like Crash Bandicoot style when you're trying to get all the crates. So it was that was kind of I wasn't as big of a fan of that. Especially because in some cases you had like that level I mentioned earlier that I hated. You had to do some really tight platforming, and because there's no drop shadow, and because Sonic's control in this game is just absolutely whack to me, you know, that was I don't know. That one was probably one of my least favorite objectives besides the mines. I hated the mines. But for the most part, I didn't mind them. It did involve me replaying the stages a lot compared to like some of the base game cyberspace levels, but I know a lot of people weren't hot on these. For the most part, I actually thought these were some of my favorite levels in the game. It was just that one in particular really got me. That one with the stupid box platforms. There were so many. It was like, at least if I remember correctly, 3 different sections with just boxes over a bottomless pit. That was not fun. So didn't enjoy that. But for the most part, honestly, I think I did enjoy some of the cyberspace levels. So I was more hot on that than most people. What else do I have here before we talk about the ending here? I think I got to most of them. I think that's kind of most of it. You know, like I said, I enjoy the core gameplay loop. Oranos Island, I mean, that was probably my favorite part, was just exploring, doing the different challenges with the characters. And because some of the characters' abilities let you just inherently cheese some of the puzzles. So if like, I usually tried a platforming puzzle and then I said like, okay, is this really annoying? If so, then I am just going to skip it for now. Oh geez, right at the 20-minute mark. But honestly, that was honestly pretty fun. I gotta say here. So yeah, you know, just kind of going around exploring. That's the addictive nature of it to me, you know? At the end of the day, I ended up having like 25 hours of this DLC alone because like I really enjoy the core gameplay loop of Sonic Frontiers. It just clicks with me. Oh, okay. Before I forget. Combat. Before we get to the ending, combat, right? So just like the base game, all around the Oranos Island, the reworked Oranos Island here, you have, I believe, what the game calls Guardians. You know, like the ninja, the tank, the tower we saw earlier. No squid. Worst DLC ever. No squid here. No, but like all of the Guardians here had reworked movesets from the base game. And this is the part where I think the difficulty was too high. I think the combat in particular might be the worst part about this DLC, just combat across the board. So it seems like Kishimoto and team took the feedback of, oh, the base game is a little too easy, which I could agree with, you know, especially in your end game where it's like you're really powerful. It's like, you know, you can kind of breeze through some of those Guardians, just get those portal gears. Here, they definitely overcompensated for the difficulty. The difficulty in this DLC is absurd because the issue is they made all of the Guardians way more challenging to beat. Let's see if I can find one that I fight. They made them way more difficult to beat. And honestly, it was just not fun as a result. Like some of them are just like super fast. Like they shoot out these laser beams like crazy and you're trying to dodge them and hit them back. And it's honestly kind of absurd. The issue though, is because they're brand new characters that you're introducing. Yeah, here's the spider fight that I could not even come close to beating. Because they are brand new characters, they have brand new skill trees. And look, the levels, I'm at level 1 for everything right now. And it's going to take a while to level them up. And even then, I think the leveling up system, I found it hard to even get as many unlockables or like items for them as I did with Sonic, especially because you have 3 characters versus 1 now. But these fights, they made them way more challenging than the base game, which there was no balancing here. Like, you have brand new characters who can't even stand a chance against them. And I will say, what I did, I fought and beat every single one of these on Ornos Island, but what I did was because I'm a madman and I had maxed out Sonic stats look at how fast that was. You had no time to react, no frames at all to react. Sonic stats were maxed out for me all across the board from the base game. So I'm like, great, okay, I will fight them as Sonic. And I forgot I had hard mode on, so that was definitely part of it. But it still took me, some of these Guardians took me like 5 minutes to beat with a maxed out Sonic. But granted, like I said, that was on hard mode, so that could have accounted for that. But it's just it's the issue of introducing like end game Guardian fights with brand new characters who are starting off at level 1 stats. Like, I think that was a terrible idea. I really think they should have had, and I know the base game didn't have this, but they either should have made them just like Kronos or Ares level difficulty, or they should have had level scaling, because unfortunately I could not fight any of these as the other characters. I had to do Sonic, otherwise I would have been grinding, and I would have spent even longer in this game on the DLC trying to unlock upgrades for all these characters, you know? So unfortunately, not a fan of that. And like, some of them were so difficult, I would be running around spin dashing nonstop as Sonic. The Caterpillar and Tank in particular were brutal. That Spider was pretty challenging. The Ninja was honestly the easiest one this time around for me. I guess kind of like the base game too. They weren't too bad, because luckily you can parry and stuff. But all right, let's talk about the ending. Excuse me. Sorry, I kind of had a nasty cough last week and it's continuing now, so I apologize for that. Let's talk about the ending. So spoiler alert, right, for the final ending. In this game, as Sonic, what you do, you collect the Chaos Emeralds as the 3 separate characters. Each one kind of collects 2. You get to a point where the Lookout Coco I mentioned earlier, you are collecting to unlock these towers, kind of like the towers on Rhea Island. This feels like a more purposeful version of those, where, you know, you need to climb these towers, and the climbing towers can be brutal. I know as people, from what I saw on social media, people in particular were upset about the climbing of the towers. There were like a couple that were really challenging for me, I thought, but the rest weren't too bad. But granted, that's from my experience, you know, as someone who's played 60 hours of this game now, right? And then at the top, you have like combat challenges, which not a fan of those, to be honest. It really kind of felt dumb. I feel like the challenge should have mainly just been the platforming, and you get up there like, oh, you're good. It's like, great. You don't need to do a separate combat challenge. Most of them were either tedious or just stupidly annoying. And I ended up spamming like the cross/slash move over and over again. Now, the final tower, which is what you get after you are done playing with all the characters. Each side character, like I said, gets 2 emeralds. Eggman actually just gives you the last emerald in a cutscene right before the final boss. But the final, there was one more tower you unlock as Sonic, and there's another tower you have to climb. The tower's pretty challenging. Honestly, I didn't find it to be the most challenging one. There was another one that was really cheap. I thought this was a good challenge for the final one. But the combat challenge, you meet the Master King Coco, they call him. And he's like, oh, he's the hero, the chosen one of the ancients or whatever. His challenge is a boss rush of the 3 Titan fights from the main game, pre-Supreme. So Giganto, Wyvern, and Knight. And let me tell you, this is where the DLC became a slog for me. And this is where, and it sucks because the base game, the Titan fights were some of my most favorite parts about the base game. Like, I thought they were some of the best supersonic fights we've gotten because you can still do your combos during the moves. And those fights, for the most part, are pretty easy to read. We'll get into that later. But the issue is that you're set to all your base stats. So I no longer had a maxed out Sonic with a massive 999 ring count. You have the base 400 ring count for all 3 fights, which means you really, if you were to divvy it up equally, you'd have about 120-ish rings per fight. Well, 130-ish rings per fight, which I found for Giganto and Knight honestly weren't too bad. I didn't struggle with them too much. I learned how to parry really well. The thing is, on hard mode, you really have to perfect parry, and the perfect parrying timing sucks. My issue is with Wyvern. I had to do this so many times, I eventually had to switch it to easy mode in order to beat these, because, like I said, Giganto, honestly, I ended up doing it in like 80 rings, like with just the parrying timing nonstop. I got really good with the perfect parrying in this game. Night wasn't too bad either, except for the part where you have to ride the saw and the missiles keep bouncing you back and forth. That was annoying. Wyvern is not a fight designed to be on a timer. Now, when you have your full ring count for just Wyvern, that's one thing. That's more than enough time. The issue is when you only have, like I said, roughly 130-ish rings to fight it, because so much of the Wyvern fight is you waiting, flying around his head, waiting for missiles to come back at you that you have to parry back at him. And then on top of that, you have to get the parry again once he actually attacks you. And the second phase, you have to do it 3 times, 3 parries in a row in order to attack him. It's just the Wyvern fight is horrible for a boss rush. I really do not think they should have had this boss rush here. I eventually had to move it down to easy so I could get the parrying timing so much more easily. Because the annoying thing is with this boss rush is that you have to perfect parry. You cannot hold down the parry like in the base game as long as you want, right? Which was kind of broken, so I understand that. But the higher in difficulty you go, the lower the timing gets for the perfect parry, the lower the window gets. And hard mode, you got to be super perfect, which I eventually was able to beat Giganto no problem on hard mode because I got the timing so right. But Wyvern, I did not stand a chance. I could not do it. I did that boss rush over and over and over and over and over again. I hate boss rushes in games, and that was so deflating to me. It was at that moment I'm like, I just need to finish the stupid DLC, because before that, I was more positive than most people. Once I got to that boss rush, oh my god, I was so done. It was so bad. And I love Wyvern. Wyvern's like such a cool spectacle, probably my favorite fight in the base game. It's just taking that, adding a perfect parry requirement to a fight that you literally have to parry for, and then on top of that, you only have so much, you know. And even if, sure, maybe you don't evenly divide all the boss fights, that's probably not realistic in terms of the ring count. Okay, that means I need to reserve like at least 200 rings for Wyvern, and then less than 100 for the other two. Like, it's so, I don't know. I barely beat it on easy. Finally beat Night, and it was down to like literally like double-digit rings. So it got really tricky, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And then the final boss. So the final boss, like I said, you get the two emeralds from each side character. You get the final one from Eggman, and you take on the Supreme fight again from the base game, which honestly, that was fine. But they replace, if you remember from the ending, final spoiler alert right here. Oh my god, this is a long video. Final spoiler alert. You fight the end, which is that big purple planetoid thing. I think it's the moon? I don't know. Of, like, that's kind of hovering around you, that voice behind you the whole time, in a shoot 'em up format, which a lot of people complained about. I mean, I kind of like shoot 'em ups, so I didn't mind it, but it felt so out of place, and it went on for way too long. They replaced that with a much cooler spectacle, and overall, I guess I would say it's a better boss fight than the end in the base game, where essentially the end latches on to Supreme and uses Supreme as like a vessel, right? So it's got this, you see the planet in the background, the sky's all red, the tube comes down, attaches to the back of his neck, and I thought that was cool. So you're really not fighting the end, you're fighting Supreme the whole time, just kind of taken over by the end. So cool setup, but the design of this boss is the worst designed boss in the entire game. Because with the other fights, right? First of all, you have to get hit a few times at the very beginning in order to unlock what becomes, you saw in the trailer, I think people are dubbing it Cybersonic. I don't know if that's official, but I assume it probably is named that. It's essentially a second form for Supersonic, where he kind of takes on the cyber corruption and uses it to power his super form now, which he gets from beating the Master Coco trial at the end. And the thing is with that is that once you get that form, you have to, this was so stupid. The message was like, oh, you upgraded to the perfect parry. To me, the perfect parry is not an upgrade. That is a total downgrade. Like, no questions about it in my mind. So you have to perfect parry on this fight, which, like, what'll happen is they'll send like meteors at you that you have to perfect parry. And if you perfect parry enough, you're locked into this other parry session with Supreme. It took me so long to figure out what to do. One time by accident, because you'll attack him, and what happens is because he's attached to the end, the health will regenerate. So you're like, ah, crap. And it's like, okay, like the hints, when you lose, the hint says like, oh, maybe there's a way to sever the connection to the end. Like, makes sense. The stupid thing, and I did it by accident once, was you have to target the tube in order to get it off of Supreme, whether it's like attacking it enough in a combo or doing a quick side loop, which is very finicky, by the way, to detach it from Supreme. The issue, and this is why it's so stupid, is that the tube is on the back of his neck, right behind his head. And by default, the target goes immediately to his head. So you'll be attacking. I'm like, how do I get it to target the tube? So I'm trying to fly around a supersonic, try to target it. So many tries over and over and over again. And once, if you die, you have to redo the Supreme part of the fight too. I had to look up how to do this because they never explain this in the game. If you do a combo on one target and then dodge, like the bumpers to quick step to dodge, the target will then switch to another target. There was no mention of target switching in the game at all. This DLC, or from what I remember the base game, please feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I do not think it happened. So many other people were running to this issue online from what I saw, what I was reading on forums. They have a mechanic, first of all, they have a mechanic they don't explain to you that is necessary to do this fight. They do not choreograph that to you in any way. Like, you see the tube, it's like, how do I target it? You need to dodge? I did it by accident once because I was spamming X over and over again. And then I did it by accident. I'm like, oh, there we go. That's how I do it. But also, they literally require you to use perfect parry in this fight, and I guess the boss rush, when the base game explicitly says, oh, you don't have to time your parry perfectly. The base game's like, oh, no, you don't have to. You can hold it as long as you want, right? Like here. But they require it, and this is the stupid part. They lock the ending behind this parry requirement. It'd be one thing if it was like an extra hard challenge, like some of the other waves introduced, right? Where it's like, oh, this is the perfect parry challenge, you have to perfect parry, right? No, they lock pretty much a rewritten ending to this game behind a requirement that is probably way above the skill level of most of the players here. You know, maybe kids who love the game and want to see the new ending with the new characters. It's locked behind this requirement that the base game told you never had to do. And now all of a sudden you have to, with just no consideration. It is absurd. So like, that was really stupid, both with the boss rush and the final boss. That's an issue with. So that was so stupid. The perfect parry requirement, I'd get it if it was an extra hard challenge or if it was on hard difficulty specifically. But to have that be a requirement, when it was like, oh, you've upgraded to the perfect parry with Cybersonic, I'm like, that's not a fucking upgrade. Shut the hell up. Like, that is not an upgrade. So that was bad. And just the design of that fight with the tube. After that, once you detach the tube from the end to Supreme and then lower its health bar fully, you then have to side loop another part of it that is like on top of it. So getting to that, you probably want to do another dodge and switch target again. It's not even like very recognizable. You're supposed to get the gun out of Supreme, which is stored like on top of his back, and like to get to it is so and there's no visual indicating that. It also could have been that the game glitched, it didn't show the gun texture for me, but I barely saw anything. On top of that, once you get that out of there, you have to quick side loop that, which is very finicky with Supersonic especially. Then the gun comes out, lands on the ground. Then you have to go up to it and quick side loop it again in order to get through that. And there were like a couple rounds of doing that for me, at least. I think depending on how quick you can do it. It was not, you know, the design was so much more intuitive with the other Titan fights. Like, oh, you can tell when the best time to parry is. You know, for example, Knight, you know, in the second phase, the buzzsaws show a line, they go across the screen. Okay, I'm gonna get in front of that and parry it. That makes sense, it's intuitive. Giganto, he'll swipe at you to then parry, and then, you know, you can also just attack his head. Wyvern, you're floating there, the missiles are coming at you. Oh, maybe I should parry. You know, it makes sense, and it's a lot more easily readable. This, with the tube makes sense. The game does not explain to you how to target it. Either you gotta mash buttons until you get lucky, or you gotta do that dodge target switching thing, which the game never mentions at all. And then on top of that, the side looping the gun, it's just, oh man. Like I said, the spectacle and the boss itself is probably better than what was introduced in the base game with the shoot 'em up with the end. But man, it is such horrible design. I cannot excuse it. So it really, that's the thing, it ruined it for me. Like, the ending was cool with like Sonic taking on the Cyber Corruption fully, shooting out of the Supreme's gun with Eggman's help, and like blasting Supreme into the end, shooting immediately through them both, and they all blow up. Like, such a cool anime ending there, right? And you know, they ride off with a tornado at the very end. Like, what a great ending, right? Just the gameplay, the boss design, and the boss rush leading up to that. I'm not gonna lie, it really left a bad taste in my mouth, and I hate that Sonic Frontiers ended with that experience, you know? I almost had the opposite experience of what it sounded like for most people. I know a lot of people struggle with the boss rush, but with the final boss, people were like, oh, it's a cool spectacle. They were saying like it's the best part of the game. I very much disagree. I think the best part of the game, at least for me, is going around Oranos Island, collecting all these things to the different side characters. While they're not perfect, you know, they're not as nearly as good as, for the most part, their adventure counterparts. It's like the final boss, just not great. Not easy to tell how you take it out. And on top of that, it's very finicky. And I'm sure the boss rush ahead of time kind of influenced that a bit. But anyways, this video is already way too long. It's 40 minutes. Oh my God, that's way longer than I expected. I had a lot to say about this DLC. As you could probably tell, I wrote up my thoughts. I wanted to get them out there. Overall, I am still mostly positive about this DLC. You know, it's still like I enjoyed what I played up until the boss rush. Like before that, I was actually enjoying it quite a bit. And it makes me hopeful that for the future that we'll get, you know, even more side characters, or at least these returning ones, hopefully refined a bit in terms of their gameplay. In the next Sonic Frontiers-like game, I'm sure it's going to be a follow-up in a similar style. I mean, the main thing is they really need to tweak the physics, I think. I know you can adjust some of it in the settings, but even still, I had turning speed up all the way, and I still, like, it took me a solid 3 seconds to do a 180 in the air. It was kind of absurd. They need to have some kind of, like, aerial turning speed adjustment, I think. But, like, you know, they definitely need to do some tweaking there. Some of the level design could be better, and like, man, the ending boss design was just, oh, I really hope that's not a sign of the future, because I love the spectacle. It's just the boss itself was pretty bad. And that boss rush, like, don't put forced boss rushes in your games. I thought we were past that Mega Man X, and I guess classic Mega Man. I don't know. Ending left a bad taste in my mouth, but before that, I had a pretty positive experience overall. But it's unfortunately kind of a negative way to end on. You know, there's kind of a lot of negative reception with this DLC, which is unfortunate because I think it does some cool stuff. And it brings back these other side characters in 3D for the first time in so long. So it's unfortunate to end Sonic Frontiers on this, but like, I think at this point we wait for what the future has, and hopefully Kishimoto and team can learn and improve from what they implemented here. Like, clearly this was their vision in terms of the overall game, and I'm glad they got to realize that, but maybe let's refine some things for next time. But anyways, with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you made it through this whole video, thank you. Yeah, I'm not expecting anybody to hear me rambling for a 3D hedgehog for 40 minutes long, right? But I know some of you might, but I appreciate it if you did nonetheless. Let me know your thoughts on this DLC if you played it in the comments below. Or if you didn't, you know, did I not sell you on it? Did I sell, you know, whatever. Anyways, we're gonna leave it here for now. Thank you again. I will catch you all on the next video or live stream. Speaking of which, Sonic fans, I will be live streaming Sonic Superstars shortly after it releases. Might not make release day. We'll see when my pre-order comes in, but I will be streaming it, so feel free to stick around the channel if you're interested in that. But until next time, see you later. Keep going fast.